We all deal with the law every day. But have you ever stopped to think about whether it's actually working as well as it could be? Today, we're going to look at the legal system through a completely different lens. Not as lawyers, but as economists. We're going to ask if our laws are designed for maximum performance. So let's start with a big what if. What if we looked at our legal system like a machine? A machine that's supposed to be designed for a purpose, to get specific jobs done with the least amount of friction or waste. That's the core idea we're going to unpack. Now, there's a formal name for this, the economic analysis of law, and it all revolves around one central question. Is a law efficient? And it is so important to get what efficient means here. We're not just talking about money. It's about getting outcomes that give society the biggest possible bang for its buck, the most benefit for the least cost. But why? I mean, why would you even apply something as seemingly cold as economics to the world of law? Well, it's because this perspective gives us a really powerful and sometimes kind of surprising way to understand the rules that govern our lives. Okay, so the real value here is twofold. First, economics is great for predicting how people will actually react to a new law. It treats laws like incentives that people respond to. And second, it gives us that one clear yardstick, efficiency, to measure if a law is really working. And this isn't just for business stuff. We can point this lens at everything from property law to personal injury cases to even criminal justice, trying to find that hidden economic logic, what they call the efficiency rationale behind it all. So, if we're going to think like an economist, we need to know what's in their basic toolkit. And the good news is, you don't need a math degree for this. It's all about a few key ideas. We're just going to focus on the core concepts, the building blocks, that let us see the law in this whole new light. So the process kind of goes like this. It starts with one big assumption, that people are generally rational and they respond to incentives. They try to make themselves better off. From there, you can predict where things will settle, a point of balance, or equilibrium. When things get more complicated, with people reacting to each other, you can use tools like game theory. And only after you figure out the behavior can you finally step back and ask the big question. Was the final outcome efficient? Did it create the most possible value for society? All right, now that we have the toolkit, let's actually see what happens when we use it. We're going to apply these ideas to a couple of very different parts of the law. First, just a little bit of context. Law is generally made in one of two ways. In a common law system, like in the US, judges make decisions in court cases, and those decisions become law over time. In civil law systems, which you see in much of Europe, the legislature writes these big, comprehensive legal codes. This matters because economists are super interested in whether one of these systems naturally creates more efficient laws than the other. Okay, let's start with something so basic we almost never think about it. Property law. It seems simple, right? But if you look at it through this economic lens, it becomes this really fascinating puzzle. And the puzzle begins with a huge, fundamental question. Just forget history or philosophy for a second. From a purely economic standpoint, why do we even have property? What's the point? What problem is it actually solving? Well, from this economic view, the answer is all about incentives. It's that simple. If you own something, you have a reason to take care of it, maybe even improve it. When ownership is clear, it also makes it super easy to buy and sell things, so a house or a car can end up with the person who values it the most. And this simple idea prevents what's called the tragedy of the commons. That classic problem where a shared park or fishing area gets totally ruined because no single person has an incentive to protect it. So the ultimate goal is to get an efficient system where our resources are put to their best possible use. Okay, now let's take this logic and apply it somewhere much more controversial. Crime and punishment. Can the cold, hard math of efficiency really have anything to say about how we handle criminal behavior? Well, economists say absolutely yes. And this brings us to a question that just sounds wrong at first, doesn't it? Can there actually be an efficient level of crime? Because from a purely economic view, the goal isn't zero crime. Think about it. The cost to achieve that would be insane. No, the real goal is to find a very different kind of balance. The economic model basically treats this whole thing like a cost-benefit analysis. On one side, a rational person considering a crime weighs the potential reward against the price, that is, the punishment, times the odds of actually getting caught. Then for society, the trade-off is between how much crime costs us versus how much it costs to prevent it. So the goal isn't to stamp out every single crime. The goal is to find that sweet spot that minimizes the total social cost. That's the cost of the crime itself, plus the cost of trying to stop it. It is a very pragmatic and, yeah, for a lot of people, a pretty unsettling way to think about it. So, after looking at something as fundamental as property and as controversial as crime, where does this all leave us? Does trying to make everything efficient automatically lead to a better, more rational legal system? At the end of the day, the biggest takeaway here isn't a specific answer to any one question. It's about learning a new way to think, which is captured perfectly by this phrase from the source material: learning to think like an economist about legal issues. It's about building a whole new muscle for analysis, and that's the key. This economic lens doesn't just erase other values like justice or fairness or morality. But what it does give us is a really powerful, kind of impartial tool to stress test our laws. It's a way to question our own assumptions and ask, hey, are these rules actually doing what we want them to do in the best way possible? Which leaves us with one final and pretty challenging question to chew on. Let's say we prove a law is incredibly efficient. It does its job perfectly with minimal cost. Does that automatically make it a good law? A just law? Is efficiency the most important thing, or is it just one tool among many? That's the big question this powerful way of thinking forces us all to face.